Revelation 17. And I know a few of you were here for the first service, so you'll hear it again. But very interesting passage of Scripture. I'm going to try to put a modern-day spin on it because I'm of the persuasion that these things are happening right now, right before our eyes. And as we read through this, you'll see that it's very pertinent to what's going on right now in the world today. But as we've been going through the book of Revelation, just to give you a little backfill, John is told in Revelation 1:19, as he's in exile on the island of Patmos, he's told to write the things which you have seen, and then write the things that are, and write the things which shall be hereafter. In Revelation chapter 4, John is told to come up here. As he's caught up into heaven, he said, come up here. And Jesus tells him, these are the things that are going to be hereafter. Write the things that are going to be hereafter. So we believe that Revelation's interpreted literally. Okay, there's a lot of figurative language. There's a lot of words like and as that you have to try to figure out what the text is saying. And as you read through the Old Testament, it really ties together, especially the books of Daniel and Isaiah, Jeremiah. It ties together these end times prophecies that we see in the book of Revelation. But the things that are hereafter, we believe, talk about when God is through with the church age and he turns his timetable back to Israel at that time, okay? Now, that can happen at any time because Israel is back in the land the way the scriptures foretold, okay? Israel is there, so at any time, God can turn his timetable away from the church to Israel, and then we're in that last day, 7-year tribulation period that the Bible talks about as the time of Jacob's trouble. Now, in that time, it's described in detail from Revelation 6 through 19. It talks about what's going to happen on the earth, in specific to the Middle East at that time, in that time period, the judgments that are going to fall from God on the Middle East at that time. Now, again, when God's judgment falls, it doesn't necessarily mean, you got to keep it in your head, that God's sitting up in heaven, zapping judgments down with his mighty index finger. That's not what it means. When God judges, so often he'll use the nations. He'll pull back his hand. He'll let people have their way. He'll say, you want to worship false gods? He kind of lets people have their own way as he judges. Sometimes it is the direct hand of God. Sometimes it's the indirect hand of God allowing things to take their place. And so the judgment of God hits. Kind of like in our own lives. When we get chastised by the Lord, it's not like the Lord is literally, smashing us. What he does is he says, you want to have it your way? You want to get chastised? Okay, and he takes his hands off, and he lets us do our own thing, and we fall under the chastising hand of God through our own vices and our own sins, and then God kind of gets our attention and pulls us back to himself. Now remember, as we've been going through Revelation 6 through 19, primarily what's going on here is the last day's judgments are hitting the earth in the forms of the seal judgments, the trumpet judgments, and then the vial judgments. What I mean by that, what's a seal, what's a trumpet, what's a vial? Well, it's just this. There's a scene in heaven. The scene in heaven is shown to us that the angels of God, they come and Jesus opens the seals, and then the trumpets judgments roll out of that. The last seal judgment, he opens a seal. The last seal are the trumpet judgments, and the last of the trumpet judgments are the vial or the bowl judgments. Now, what that means is this. When a seal is unloosed in heaven from the scroll, seen in Revelation 5, a judgment hits the earth. When the trumpet is blown by the angels in heaven, what happens is a judgment hits the earth. When a bowl is poured out in heaven, a judgment hits the earth. So from the spiritual side of things, we see to the other side in the book of Revelation. What does Revelation mean? Revelation means, Greek is apocalypsos, apocalypse. It means to unveil, to show us something, to unveil who? Jesus Christ. In his majesty, in his judgment, the way he kind of governs heaven, and the way as he governs heaven, what happens to the earth. That's unveiled for us in the book of Revelation. And what's literally going on as we get to see into the other side, into that dimension, into that heavenly dimension, when these judgments are poured out in heaven, what affects the earth. Now, we come to a point in Revelation 17 that it describes to us a beast again, and then it describes to us a harlot, and she's named Mystery Babylon. Okay? Mystery Babylon. See, so what's going on here? What's this beast? What's this harlot? Mystery Babylon. What's going on? What is all this? Now, remember, we've seen in the last 7-year period, there's an antichrist who leads this false religious system and is empowered by a political system also. All right? And this beast system that's on the earth at the end times, what does it do? It has mass conversions. And this Antichrist who leads up this beast system, what does he do? He persecutes the Jews at that time in particular. And the Bible talks about in Revelation the martyrs and the Jewish people who are martyred for their faith. Now, as you come to this part in Revelation 17, it's going to describe to us this harlot that's not literally a woman, it's a place, and her interaction with the beast. Why is this significant? Well, as we go through this, I'll kind of explain it. But keep in your head, we're almost through the last 3.5 years of the tribulation period, okay? That last 7-year period that's going to hit the earth as God's judgments fall from heaven. Massive apostasy going on in the world. Massive conversions to this beast system, okay? Going on all over the world, especially in the Middle East. And then we're introduced here to a harlot that rides the beast. Now, a harlot's not a literal person. It's not a woman, all right? The Bible actually tells us. Now, you got to keep in mind as we go through this, you got to keep in mind we're getting a glimpse of this last days period and this last days entity, the beast. Remember, what's the beast? The beast isn't just a person. That's Antichrist. The beast is a system in place in the last days. Now, how do we know that? How do we interpret that? How do we know that the beast is a system and it's not a person? Because you hear Christians run around all the time. Oh, the beast of Revelation. This one's the beast. That one's the beast. No. The beast is not a person. The beast is a system. Now, there's an Antichrist who rules this system. Now, how do we know that the beast is a system, is a political entity and a religious entity? Well, you know that because if you look in Daniel, Daniel tells us clearly in chapter 7, Daniel describes for us these nations that were going to rule this area, all right, in the Middle East. He describes for us these nations, and he describes them to us, and these are the nations. Babylon, he describes for us. Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. He describes them to us in the way God interprets them and describes them for us in chapter 7, is he describes them to us as beast. How? He says that Babylon is like a lion, a beast. Then God says Medo-Persia is like a bear, a beast. And then he says Greece is like a leopard, this beast nation. So Greece is described to us as a what? As a leopard, because leopards move swiftly. And Alexander the Great conquered swiftly. Persia, okay? Medo-Persia. They're described to us as a bear. They were a massive army, the Persians, okay? And they moved slowly, but they conquered. So we know that the beast of Revelation is some kind of political entity with spiritual overtones also. Now, as we read through this, you're going to see who the beast is. I'm going to tell you what I believe it is, because I believe it's Islam. And then we're going to see this nation and this city in particular that benefits by riding the beast. She is the harlot described for us in chapter 17. Now watch. Now again, don't take anything I say. Go and study it for yourself. Go and look it up. Google it, do some study, do some research, because you're going to see for years, all right, for years, before we get into it, Many scholars have interpreted Revelation 17. They would say that, well, Mystery Babylon is kind of a conglomerate of all false religious worship since the beginning of time. That's what they would say. So when the Bible talks about Mystery Babylon, which is what it talks about in verse 5 of Revelation 17, what it's talking about is a religious entity that isn't, worship of the true God. It's kind of a conglomerate of all religions put together, in any religion that is not, worshiping the true and living God, which is, we know, is biblical Christianity. That's what they'll say it is. Then there's a system of interpretation that says, well, Mystery Babylon is the Roman Empire. It's not just the Roman Empire. It's in particular in Rome. It's the Catholic Church, because they go apostate from Christ. So that's what Mystery Babylon is, because it talks about 7 hills and 7 mountains, and they believe that's Rome. I don't think that's even close, to be honest with you. But if you fall in that camp, you can debate with me and be wrong if you want. But seriously, I just don't think it's that. I think it's a literal system on the earth in the last days, all right? I don't think it's a conglomerate of all false religions put together that just make up Mystery Babylon. I think we're talking about a specific time period, the Great Tribulation. And there's a specific beast in play during that time period, which is that political system. And then I believe Mystery Babylon is a literal place. It's a literal city in play in that last time, because it tells us that right in this chapter. Revelation 17. By the way, I'm sorry, you say you're going to read it, Matt? You said that 3 times already. All right. By the way, if you've missed some of these messages leading up, get the app, get those things so you can, because it's kind of hard to jump into Revelation 17 without any background. So try to listen to some of those messages as you're leading up to it, and you'll know where we're going. So there came one of the 7 angels, which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come here, I will show unto you the judgment of the great whore that sits upon many waters. Now listen. What's going on here? Who are the 7 angels? Well, if you look in chapter 16, you don't have time to go there. There are these 7 angels that go into God's temple, and what they come out of the temple with, God tells them to go pour out the last plagues on the earth. So those 7 angels are in heaven. They come out of God's temple, and they have vials or bowls, and they pour these plagues out on the earth in chapter 16. Now, one of those 7 angels, John is obviously caught away in the spirit. He's seeing things of the last days. One of the angels says, Come here, John, I want to talk to you. I want to show you something. I want to explain something to you. I will show unto you the judgment of the great whore that sits upon many waters. Now, what are the waters? Well, the Bible tells us. Let the Bible interpret the Bible. Look in verse 15. And he said unto me, The waters which you saw where the whore sits are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. So this whore, this system, okay, again, it's not a female. It's describing to us some false religious worship at the time, and it's describing to us a place, all right? Sits upon many waters, and the waters make up people groups, the Bible tells us. Verse 2. Now, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. Now we know the wilderness, what? It's not like trees and things like that. That's the way we think of wilderness. It's a desert place. It's a desert place. So he carries him to a desert place, a literal place, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, the woman doesn't have 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast does. Now, listen. What he's not talking about here is this literal woman riding this literal beast, okay? He's talking about powers and entities. How do we know that? How can we be sure of that? Well, the scriptures tell us. The scriptures describe it for us. The scriptures explain it to us. Look what he says. He carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, the 7 heads and 10 horns are just what? The 7 heads are 7 powers. He's going to explain that to us in verse 9. And the 10 horns are what? Yes, 10 kingdoms, 10 powers. Horn in the scriptures is what? It's a symbol of a power. Now, the church for years, especially it got popular in the 70s, into the 80s, 90s, and it started to die out in the 2000s. The church for years believed that this last days system, this last days beast, if you will, this last days political entity that was going to encompass the whole world was a revised Roman Empire. Okay? Now, geographically, it makes up some of the Roman Empire. But remember when, some of you have been around, you remember this stuff. They say, well, there's 10 kingdoms that are going to be around in the last days. And remember the whole European Union thing, right? And the European Union came together. There was 8, and then Greece became the 10th nation in the 80s. And then they're like, this is it. This is the last days system that's in place where the Antichrist is going to rise out of these. Well, then there was 11. Then there was 12. Now there's like 29 or 35. I don't know. There's a lot of them. The European Union. So the church kind of got away from that. Well, that can't be the last days system. That can't be the last days beast where the Antichrist is going to ride, because it cannot be. Now, there is a system in play today that, maybe 100 years from now, look back and they'll say that people that believe what I'm saying that we're wrong too, but I don't think so. There's a system in play today where the 10 nations could come to power. And it's the same nations that the Bible describes to us in Isaiah and in Jeremiah that Christ comes to fight against in the last days to protect the Jews. And where are those nations? Those nations are in the Middle East. Iraq, Iran, Syria, all of those nations, I believe, make up the 10 nations. They haven't come together yet, but they're trying to form it. That make up the last days beast of the book of Revelation. Okay? The last days beast. Now listen, you watch the news, you see what's going on with ISIS and all this stuff. You know what the leader of ISIS calls himself? The head of the Islamic Caliphate. Okay? What's the Caliphate? The Caliphate, they believe all those nations, all that area in the Middle East belongs to the Muslims. They own it. It's their territory, and that's why they want to kill the Jews and get them out of. They believe it's their land, all right? So they can form their Islamic Caliphate. They need Turkey to be able to, and that's why they want to institute Sharia law and all that stuff. And remember how it talks about that these 10 nations, 3 of them will be destroyed, and then there'll be 7 of them left? Many people think that, you have the war with the Muslims, you have the Sunnis and the Shiites. They believe that the Shiites, 3 of their nations, will be destroyed, and the Sunnis will reign, and the Islamic Caliphate will be born. This is going on right now before our eyes, right in front of us. Look what it says. He carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast. We know the beast is this last days entity, which I believe, until I'm proven wrong, that it could be Islam. Scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. Now it's talking about, listen, this is why I don't believe it's talking about everything put together, false religion and false worship since the beginning of time. We're talking about a specific time period. The end of the Great Tribulation period. There's a woman who's called a harlot, who's rich with purple, fine linen, scarlet. She's rich. Now, the Bible tells us who this woman is? The woman's a city. It's a place. Look in verse 18. And the woman which you saw, the Bible's going to tell you. The woman which you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. So who's the woman? It's a city. It's a place, right? Who are the waters? Verse 15, they're people groups, right? Coming together. Now listen, I'm going to give you a system of interpretation here. I'm going to tell you what I think it is from my study. And again, I'm not the scholar or the son of a scholar, but this is what I'm going to tell you. What nation on the earth right now makes all the earth drunk with the wine of her fornication? Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, which is an Islamic state. How do they make the nations drunk with her wine? Oil. Right? If something happens to Saudi Arabia, it affects the globe. You'll say, well, why does the harlot, if Saudi Arabia, in particular, probably maybe Mecca, if that is the harlot, why does she ride the beast? Because if the beast is Islam, and that political entity, which is also a spiritual entity of false religious worship, why does she ride the beast? Because she uses Islam, right? She uses Islam as a covering and a protection to make her rich. Saudi Arabia is one of the richest nations on the planet. All the nations are drunk with the wine of her fornication. Now stay with me. So you say, because what's going to happen? This is interesting. What's going to happen to Arabia, to Saudi Arabia? This is prophesied in Isaiah. What's going to happen is they're going to be destroyed. They're going to be destroyed. The Bible prophesies that the beast, stay with me, as you read into Revelation 18, we'll go there next week, the beast actually destroys the harlot. When the beast destroys the harlot, which is what? It's not a woman, it's a city, it's a place. When the beast destroys the harlot, the merchants of the earth cry out and they're screaming to God because they're losing all their money and the economy goes down. You with me? Did you know right now, the Bible tells us what nation is going to destroy Arabia, Saudi Arabia? You know what nation that is? The Bible tells us it's Persia. It's modern day Iran. Modern day Iran is... Now go home and Google this. Right now, Saudi Arabia is making plans that they want to destroy Iran. And Iran, in turn, is making plans they want to get nuclear capability that they want to destroy Saudi Arabia. Why is that? You know the Muslim nations in the Middle East, even though Saudi Arabia is a Muslim nation, do you know they hate Saudi Arabia? Because they live in luxury. They live in luxury. And what? You see, Saudi Arabia is always their higher-ups and their sheiks or whatever they're called. They're always meeting with the presidents and this and that all over the world for their oil deals. And the radical Muslims hate that. Hate that. The Bible tells us that Persia is going to destroy Arabia, which is modern-day Iran and Saudi Arabia. And then the nations of the earth, the merchants will scream and cry over it because of what happens to the economy. I believe this stuff is happening right before our eyes. We need to wake up. I believe we're close and we're in the last days. Like it's right there. Jesus could come for his church at any time. Like this stuff is going on right before our eyes. Look what it says. Upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman, this is the woman that rides the political entity, which is the beast, and I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, this is one of the 7 angels that came to talk with him. The angel said unto me, where did you marvel? Why did you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. He's going to explain to us who this last days entity, beast, is. Why did you marvel? And what did he see first? He goes, he saw the woman, right? She did what? Persecuted the saints. You hear about the martyrdom that goes on in Saudi Arabia? Do you hear about the martyrdom that's going on in the Middle East and parts of northern Africa? Amongst your brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ. Right now. Right now. See, listen, we just skate along, life here in the West, and, we're just worried about everything that we, our own things and our own. And yeah, we'll pray for them. Yeah, we'll throw them a couple dollars here and there. But right now, your brothers and sisters in Christ are being beheaded for their faith. Right now. Not just isolated incidents that they try to put out on the news, and on social media for you to see to freak us out. That stuff's going on by the hundreds right now. Your Christian brothers and sisters, mine. I was up at 3 a.m. the other day because I can't sleep half the time. And I'm up, and so I start to look on the internet, I'm Googling, and I'm seeing the images of the beheadings. You know what the Bible talks about? John said, I saw those who were beheaded for the word of God and for the testimony of Jesus Christ. He saw this. He saw what's going to happen in the last days. It happens right before our eyes. Now listen to me. You say, Pastor Matt, because what I'm not trying to do is get you to go out of here and, start holy wars with Muslims. That's not what I'm trying to do. That's not what I'm doing. We're supposed to convert the world through preaching the gospel and the love of Jesus Christ. But radical Islam believes that they're supposed to convert the world through jihad. Okay? And through deception. The Bible tells us in Daniel, all right, that, listen to me, that by peace, this last day's beast will destroy many. And what do you see all over the news all the time? We need to have sympathy, this and that. Islam's a religion of peace and blah, blah, blah. And then in, 2001, the World Trade Centers, they go down, and now there's a mosque right up the road from there. Because we think we can negotiate peace with radical Islam. You can't. Just like someone's not going to come and tell me, hey, you know something? Is Jesus the Christ? I'll say yes. And would I give my life for Jesus Christ if it came to it? Yes, I would. Just like I won't negotiate that, they don't negotiate their belief that there's only one God, Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. You can't negotiate religion. It's not going to happen. You say, well, that's the problem with the world. Don't you love the secularists? Like, they come point at us and they say, that's the problem with the world. It's you religious fanatics. You're the problem. I say, well, wait a minute. Here's the difference. The difference is my Jesus tells me to go and preach the gospel. As I'm preaching, you can tell me to shut up and you don't have to listen. But their Muhammad tells them to go and kill people in the name of their God. There's a big difference there. And I said this in the first service, I'll say it again. Those foolish stickers, we're all going to coexist together, those bumper stickers, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Israel. The Muslims believe that Jerusalem is the third holiest site in their belief system. Christians, obviously, we believe it's the holiest site, and the Jews, right? That land to us is non-negotiable. We believe that God gave it to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You know what it says in the Quran? It says in the Quran that they believe that God gave it to Abraham and Ishmael. Do you see what I'm saying here? Now listen. It goes all the way back. That's why people read Revelation 17, and for years the church has taught, you know what? Mystery Babylon. It's Rome. It's all that stuff, and and they're the apostate church and all this stuff. It cannot be. And the Antichrist is the revised Roman Empire. Well, Jesus nowhere in the scriptures, because it tells us that Messiah comes to fight against these nations in the last days, and it doesn't tell us anywhere that he's fighting against European nations. You know what it does tell us, though? That he comes and fights against the Muslim nations that surround Israel, that want to destroy Israel. That's what the scriptures say. It's happening right before our eyes. It's happening right now. Now watch. I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus, and I saw her. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. Now remember, the woman is this city. It's this place. It could be in Saudi Arabia. And the angel said unto me, wherefore did you marvel? Why did you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that you saw, listen to this. Now this is kind of confusing language. You got to kind of follow it here. The beast that you saw was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. So this beast was and is not and shall ascend. So this beast that was, he's going to describe to us, I believe, right here, the satanic influences or beast nations that the devil used to try to destroy the Jewish people before the time of Christ. And then he's going to describe to us the beast nation that's going to be in power at the end times, that it's going to try to destroy the Jewish people at that time so Jesus can't come back and save his people. That's exactly what he's going to tell us right here. The beast that you saw was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. There's another one coming, and then go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. He's going to tell us now. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. All right. I'll explain this as we go through. It's kind of confusing language because it says 5 are gone, then there's another one, then there's a 7th, and the 8th is of the 7th. It's kind of confusing as we read through this. You got to try to stay with me here. But listen, I want to tell you something. Jesus said in the Olivet Discourse that the days will come, listen to me, that the days will come that those who kill you, talking about Christian converts, those who kill you Christians will believe that they're doing God's service. Okay? What does Islam say? When they're beheading Christians, they believe that they're doing God's service. You know what they are? Allah Akbar. They start screaming. You know what that means? Allah is great. God is great, as they're cutting people's heads off. They believe that they're doing God's service. Now listen, you say, Pastor Matt, you're freaking me out here. I didn't want to come in and get freaked out, and this is horrible stuff going on. Listen, and it is, but it's real. It's real. And little by little, it's infiltrating the whole earth. Okay? The Bible talks about an apostasy and in the last days that's going to come upon the earth where many Christians fall away from. Listen, I'm getting to the persuasion that I don't think it's Christians falling away from true Orthodox biblical Christianity to water down biblical Christianity. I don't think it's that. I think it's going to be clear. It's going to be right out there. It's going to be, you believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, or you don't, or you believe that there's one God, Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. Listen to me. Know what it says in the Quran? Because the Quran and the Hadith's the writings of Muhammad, talks about, they believe in Jesus too. You know that, right? When you talk about Muslims, they say, oh, we believe in Jesus. Be careful. It's deceptive, though. It's very deceptive. We believe in Jesus. This is what they believe about Jesus. They don't believe that Jesus is the Son of God. They don't believe that Jesus is divine. They don't believe Jesus rose from the dead. They don't believe any of that. By the way, to be saved, you have to believe that. Jesus is the Christ. He is the Son of God. He died for your sins. He rose again from the dead. If you don't believe that, you're not saved. That's what the Bible says. Now listen to me. They believe in Jesus too. They believe there's going to be a Jesus that comes in the last days. He's going to proclaim himself as Jesus, as the Christ, okay? And you know what he does? He's a Muslim Jesus. And he goes around the earth and he preaches to the Jews and to the Christians, and he says, listen, you had me wrong. I never said I was the Son of God. Muhammad is right, that there is only one God, and Muhammad's his prophet. And he goes around, and mass amounts of Christians, so-called Christians, convert to Islam or they lose their head. That's what it says in their writings. That's what they believe. So when people tell you you're nuts, you believe this Jesus is coming back and he's going to save you and he's going to set up this kingdom and all that, you know what? There's a whole nother religion out there with 2.5 billion people in it. They believe that there's a Jesus coming too, but that Jesus is going to tell Christians and Jews that they're wrong, that Muhammad is right, and if you don't believe that, off with your head. That's coming. You say, we live in the West here. That's stupid. That can't never happen. It's happening right now in the Middle East. Right now. Right now. There's mosques going up everywhere. It's the fastest growing religion in so-called Christianized United States. Pastor Matt, you want us to run out here and fight against Muslims? No. I want you to run out of here and preach the gospel. I want you to run out of here and live for Jesus Christ. There's Muslim schools going up everywhere. Muslim schools. See, the Bible doesn't talk anywhere about schools and public schools and all that, but you know what it does talk about? It talks about the training of a mind. Right? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. These things shall you teach your children diligently. When you rise up, as you go throughout the day, before you go to bed, you teach them to love God. The training of a mind. Well, there's Muslim schools going up everywhere, right? Now again, when you look on some of their websites, it says, we take people from all faiths, from all walks, and from all religions, from everything. That's the same thing like the Christian schools say. Remember, I had a bunch of friends that went to Christian school when they were kids because they were screw-ups like I was. Right? Remember they put the kid in Christian school and maybe they'll straighten him out a little bit, teach him some morals. They didn't believe it, but they just put him in there. But of course they're going to get indoctrinated little by what they hear. What they hear. It's happening right before our eyes. Listen, I don't want to freak you out, but by the year 2030, many people think that Islam and the religion of Islam will be take over 2/3 of the planet. 2/3. It's happening right before our eyes. How do we know the great apostasy is not the falling away from the faith and biblical Christianity to a whole false religion and a false God? Right? Listen, the Bible gives us hints of this. I want to read you something. John 2, verse 7, for many deceivers are entered into the world, who confess not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh. This is a deceiver and an antichrist. So the Bible just told us what antichrist is. What's antichrist? Antichrist is what? Many deceivers are entered into the world. This is in John's time and now. Who confess not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh. What does that mean? When it says Jesus Christ has come in the flesh, what it means is that God incarnate, Emmanuel, God with us. Many of them say that Jesus Christ has not come in the flesh. This is a deceiver and an antichrist. You know what Islam says? That Jesus did not come in the flesh. He is not divine. Muhammad is the last prophet. You know what it says in the Quran? It says in the Quran, in the writings. Listen, in the book of Daniel, Daniel tells us that this last days beast will understand dark sayings. Many people think that dark sayings is the Quran. Say, Pastor Matt, you can't talk evil about another religion's holy book. What are you talking about? You either believe that this is the holy book or that one. And the Bible says, Jesus says, if you're not for me, you're against me. So, and it makes me crazy. Christians that go out here, they say they love Jesus. They say they believe in the Word of God. They say they believe in preaching the gospel. And they say, well, you know what? We're not supposed to knock other religions. I don't want to knock them, but I want to tell you the truth. That's what the Bible says. And the church is so watered down. Now, somebody just told me this right before the service. I wasn't planning on saying it, but God brought it right to my mind just now. That the Pope recently showed up at a mosque in Turkey and bowed down in there, in a mosque, took his shoes off in reverence to Allah and bowed down toward Mecca. Why? To make peace? The whole reason was to make peace so the Christians would stop being persecuted. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? That can't happen. I'm not saying we're supposed to be warmongers. That's not what I'm saying here. But we need to open up our eyes and see what's going on in the world. Read you something else. 1 John 2. You hear me reference this a lot through this series. I have not written unto you because you know not the truth, but because you know it, and that no lie is of the truth. But who is a liar? He that denies that Jesus is the Christ. He is Antichrist, that denies the Father and the Son. So I didn't call them liars. The Bible did. Who is a liar? But he that denies that Jesus is the Christ. Whoever denies that Jesus is the Christ, that Christ has come in the flesh, he is Antichrist, that denies the Father and the Son. Whosoever denies the Son, the same has not the Father, but he that acknowledges the Son has the Father also. You see that? You know what Islam says? Islam says that Allah has no son. So that's a direct defiance, and that should tell you that this is Antichrist. Now listen, it only came up in the late 60s, early 70s, 80s that the revised Roman Empire, that was the system of the beast in the last days. You go back to the Reformers, go back a little after that. Sir Robert Anderson, Luther, they believed that Islam, within the tenets of Islam, was the spirit of Antichrist. Don't take anything I'm saying. Go study it for yourself. Study it. Now watch what he describes for us here. Revelation 17. He's going to tell us the powers that the devil that Satan has used to try to destroy the Jewish people. And then the last power he describes for us in the last days. The angel tells John in verse 7, don't marvel, I'm going to show you who this beast system is, and I'm going to show you who Satan has used throughout the centuries to try to destroy God's people. Verse 9, and here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Now listen, the church has said that Rome is Mystery Babylon because there's 7 hills in Rome. You know how many cities have 7 hills in them? A lot. But then it says 5 hills have fallen. Five mountains have fallen. Well, there's still 7 hills there. So it cannot be. It does not fit. 7 hills, listen, the 7 heads, powers, entities are 7 mountains. Well, to have a mountain, you have to have a king. Well, how does a king be a king over a mountain? King of the mountain? You ever play that game? I don't know. Well, it's just this, because the Bible tells us what mountains are. It tells us in the book of Daniel, chapter 2, in Nebuchadnezzar's vision. And Daniel gets this vision of the beast and the powers that were going to be in play from the time of Daniel all the way to the end. The head of gold and the breastplate of silver and the midsection of bronze and the legs of iron, the toes of miry clay and all that stuff. But then it says, I looked and I saw this vision of this statue, this metallic image, which represented the beast or the kingdoms that Satan used to try to kill and destroy the Jewish people. He goes, I looked until I saw a stone cut out with human hands, cut out without human hands, meaning something divine was going to happen. And then this stone, as I looked, I saw the stone, this rock, come and smite the image on the feet. And then that image, right, tumbled to the ground, but then that stone became a mountain which filled the whole earth. So the mountain is a kingdom. You need a king over a kingdom, okay? That's how you know. It's not 7 hills. It's 7 mountains that need kings. Now watch. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. And there are 7 kings. Now follow me. 5 are fallen. 1 is, the other is not yet come, but when he comes, he must continue a short space. I believe that's the last part of the tribulation period. In the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th and is of the 7th, and then will go into perdition. Now let me explain this to you. We have 5 kings, 5 mountains. 5 are gone, he says. 1 is around when John was writing this, right? So that would be 6. And then he says, now there's a seventh that's going to come, another kingdom. And then there's going to be an eighth kingdom that's like the seventh kingdom, but it's not the seventh kingdom. What is he talking about? Well, let me just break it down for you. This is what a lot of scholars think. The first 5 kingdoms that have fallen before John's time are Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece. The Grecians. Who was around at John's time? The Romans. That would be the 6th. So if it's a revised just a Roman Empire, there would only be a 7th, and then that 7th would also be an 8th. It really doesn't make sense. He says there's a 7th kingdom that's coming. That'll be the last days kingdom, and that kingdom will be destroyed, and then there'll be an 8th kingdom that's just like the 7th kingdom. Well, what happened? Who was the king what kingdom took over the territories in the Middle East or for the Roman Empire, right? It was the Islamic Caliphate after Muhammad in the 6th and 7th century. And you know how, and it's called the Ottoman Empire. Go look this up. Don't take my word for it. Do you know how long the Ottoman Empire lasted? Until World War I. Then they were decimated and they were destroyed. And then it says, so there's your 7th kingdom, right? Because he's talking about this area that is ruled. The 7th kingdom, right, is the Islamic Caliphate, the Ottoman Empire that was destroyed in World War I. Now it says in the last days there'll be another kingdom that rises to power that the whole earth is going to wonder after this beast. The last kingdom that we're looking at could be the kingdom of Antichrist is what? A reformation of the Islamic Caliphate in the Middle East. It's happening right now. Now listen, I'm not one that believes, and the church has taught this for years. You can fight against me if you want. That, you know what? Well, doesn't the Bible say that this last beast system takes over the whole world, and it's a one-world government, and it's a one-world system? Well, yes and no. I think it's a one-world religious entity, but it's not a one-world political power, because Daniel 11 clearly talks about that the kingdoms that are around at that time come and fight against the beast. Do you know that? What I believe is going to happen is if the Islamic Caliphate gets formed again, they're going to have some massive power. Iran is going to nuke Saudi Arabia, which is going to cause the global economy to go down. And then the kings of the earth come and fight against the beast at that time. That's what it says. Read Daniel. It's all there. Now, who's the one really fighting against them? It's Jesus Christ, fighting against the nations that hate the Jews. Let's read a little bit more. So if the 7th kingdom is the Islamic Caliphate, which was destroyed in World War I and raises to power again in the last days, it's also the 8th. And it says, in the 10 horns, which you saw, they're 10 kings, which they have not received a kingdom as of yet, but received power as kings. Listen, 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. So these 10 nations in the last days, he goes, they didn't receive a kingdom yet. But they'll be part of the 8th power that he just described. They'll come together. They'll have one mind. Listen, you know what it says in Daniel about the last days beast, if it is Islam? It says they'll try to change laws and times. What does Islam want to do? It wants to institute Sharia law over the whole globe. It's right in front of our eyes. It's right there. And by peace, they'll destroy many. They'll go in, the higher-ups, the ambassadors, we're a religion of peace. They shake hands. Allah is called the Great Deceiver. In their book, they worship a God called the Great Deceiver. That you can make peace politically, shaking hands, signing contracts. No wonder why it talks about a 7-year peace treaty that's going to happen, that people are going to believe is going to bring peace to the region, and no wonder why he's going to break the covenant, because it's the Great Deceiver. It's right in front of our eyes. It's right there. It's happening right now. I know there's not much personal application. Maybe you came to church today for some comfort to just get through the day and all that stuff. And we'll pray for you that will happen. But as we go through the Bible, there's a lot of end time stuff here. There's a lot of teaching here. But I believe it's right before our eyes. But what it should make you do is live holy for Jesus Christ, because he's coming soon. He's coming soon. Let me finish up. These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is the Lord of lords and King of kings. And they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he said unto me, the waters which you saw where the horse sits, we already know what the waters are. They're what? They're peoples and multitudes, nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which you saw upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. Remember I said, part of this religious system, this whore that rides the beast, could be Saudi Arabia, right? Now listen, and the 10 horns which you saw upon the beast, these hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. That's why many scholars think that Saudi Arabia is going to be nuked. Burn her with fire. For God had put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth.